يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا.
Islam and terrorism. Terrorism and Islam. The terms have become synonymous, but do they really reflect reality? In Europe, nearly 85% of terrorist attacks are perpetrated by separatists. Islamists account for only 0.4% of terrorist attacks in the European Union. In the US, where one is perpetually bombarded with warnings of impending Islamist attacks, the FBI reports that 42% of terrorist attacks were authored by Latinos, 24% by extreme left-wing groups, 7% by Jewish extremists, and a mere 6% by self-proclaimed Muslim jihadists. The rest of these attacks, 16% of them, were committed by white supremacist, extremist militias, and eco-terrorists. When was the last time you heard about the threat of Latino terrorism? When was the last time you heard of communist attacks against the homeland? When was the last time you were warned about the dangers of Zionist terrorism in America? In reality, the danger of terrorism in the United States is statistically insignificant. Out of more than 140,000 murders in the United States in September 11, 2001, so-called Islamic terrorists accounted for fewer than 3 dozen deaths by the end of 2010. Since 9/11, nearly twice as many people have been killed by white supremacists, anti-government fanatics, and other non-Muslim extremists than by radical Muslims. According to odds of dying in a terrorist attack, we are 13 times more likely to die in a railway accident than from a terrorist attack. 12,571 times more likely to die from cancer than from a terrorist attack. 6 times more likely to die from hot weather than from a terrorist attack. 8 times more likely to die from accidental electrocution than from a terrorist attack. 11,000 times more likely to die in an airplane accident than from a terrorist plot involving an airplane, 87 times more likely to drown than die in a terrorist attack, 404 times more likely to die in a fall than a terrorist attack, 17,600 times more likely to die from heart disease than from a terrorist attack, 1,048 times more likely to die from a car accident than from a terrorist attack, 12 times more likely to die from accidental suffocation in bed than from a terrorist attack, 9 times more likely to choke to death on their own vomit than die in a terrorist attack, and 8 times more likely to be killed by a police officer than by a terrorist. Although terrorism continues to dominate television, the airways, and the written press, it only accounts for a tiny proportion of the world's violence. We are more likely to die from brain-eating parasites, alcoholism, obesity, medical errors, and risky sexual behavior, or just about anything other than terrorism. Don't get me wrong, terrorism is a real threat. However, the threat to the US from Muslim terrorists has been exaggerated for political purposes. The greatest threat to our homeland comes from homegrown terrorists, racist white supremacists who parade around as Christian patriots while they target African American churches, Muslim mosques, and anyone they perceive as a minority. Terrorism has no religion. Instead of making America hate again, let's make America great again. Jesus didn't say hate your neighbor, Jesus said love your neighbor. Let us unite as Jews, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists against the hatred and terror that threatens us all. We are human beings, first and foremost.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين.